Hi. Um, I'm going to try and make my speech as short as possible. What I really love is question and answers, and I was told I should keep time for that. When my friend Rajesh, when he called me to come and speak here, I told him, look, man, there are chief marketing officers, MDs, CEOs out here. Brand building के बारे में मैं क्या बताऊंगा उनको? So I was a banker who'd strayed into marketing. So he said, no, forget about your banking days. No one's really interested in my banking days. Try and speak about your books, and the marketing of the books. And the thought of my books and marketing actually reminded me of a conversation that I'd had with my CEO. I was a banker for 14 years. In fact, a financial services person. In my last few years, I used to look after marketing, product management, and service quality at an insurance company. And there's a conversation that I'd had with my boss, with the CEO of the company. This was when my first book had already been released, and by God's grace, it had done reasonably well. And we were discussing a brochure, a life insurance brochure. Now, how many of you guys have any association with life insurance? Have you worked for a life insurance company? Yeah, okay. Oh, a few of you. Okay, sorry for you guys. There's this American film director who said there are things worse than death. Have you ever spent an evening with a life insurance guy? Okay. And we were discussing a life insurance company brochure. Yes, marketing was one of the departments that I headed. It was difficult for anyone to stay awake while reading that brochure. It's a life insurance brochure, yeah. So my boss, of course, he was trying to rile me. He said, look, you've written a book which people actually want to pay money for and buy. Why can't you write a brochure which also people would want to pay money for and buy? He was, of course, trying to rile me. And this was a part of a very long philosophical conversation that we were having. Who's the owner of the brand? And what he was trying to do is follow the traditional model of forcing it onto the CMO. That the CMO is the owner of the brand because the brand is built by all the communication that's done, nothing else. Whereas what I was trying to tell him, that no, communication is only a part of it. Every touch point with the consumer builds the brand. And your brand has to be in consonance with what the consumer is seeing. And that's where the debate was, because he was saying that, look, I can't trust the frontline sales guy, what he says to the customer. So I need your brochure to do the entire work. And I was telling him, how the hell can the brochure do that entire work? And this was the debate that we were having. And this is the thought that I thought I'll build my speech on. That who's the owner of the brand in today's world? There was a time, 15, 20 years ago, in the wonderful age when consumers didn't have too much power, and brand building was a one-way monologue where we would come out with nice ads, and the consumers would simply accept what they were told. Or even if they had complaints, it's not that it could really build up into a movement, because there's no way to communicate with each other. What has happened now is, with the rise of social media, brand owners or communicators are less in control of their brand. Consumers are far more in control with what people think of the brand. In the older days, for example, if a book or a movie had to build its brand name, there were 10 reviewers who you had to manage. Each reviewer in one newspaper, each newspaper would reach out to 200,000, 300,000 people. As long as you made sure that those reviewers spoke well of your movie or your book, yeah, that opinion would become the received opinion. These days, it's not so anymore. There are 10,000 bloggers, each of them reaching out to 1,000 people. There are readers who have themselves become opinion makers through Facebook and social media. So are you, as the communicator, in control of your brand anymore? I argue no. You're actually just a facilitator. Now, if you are in this scenario, then how should you work with your brand? And I'll try and give you some examples of stuff that I've learned from the corporate world and stuff from my own little book marketing experience. I think the first lesson that I learned in the modern day, if you want to build your brand, is never promise what you can't deliver. In the olden days, you could get away with it. There are FMCG companies which used to promise an egg shampoo, and we've all had friends work in those companies, and we all know there was practically little or no eggs in those shampoos. But in the olden days, it didn't really matter. Today, if you try and make a promise which you can't really deliver on, you end up having problems. Let me give you a few examples. There's this company, I'm not going to give the name, an MNC travel agency in India, which had a very good idea. And the idea emerged from the marketing team that, look, there was a time when the only people traveling abroad were those Indians for whom their native language was English. But today, most of the people traveling abroad, in fact, most of the people with rising incomes are actually people for whom English is just the language at the office. The language of their heart, the language that they communicate in their culture, the language that they speak at home is not English. It could be Hindi, it could be Marathi, it could be Gujarati, Tamil, whatever. So we should have a travel program for these people, okay, that they will have guides who will, speak their language. They will have communication material in their language whenever they travel abroad, blah, blah, blah. Essentially, a very good marketing idea. And they built a very nice marketing campaign around this, a TV program, everything. And the marketing was good. The problem was at the product delivery. Because when the consumers went abroad, their guides were essentially anglicized elite guys trying to speak Marathi. So they would pronounce Z as J. And most Maharashtrians couldn't understand head or tail of what those guys were saying. It's like you've heard Hindi guys, Hindi being spoken by people whose native language is not Hindi, whose native language is English. Main wahan pe karta tha. And you laugh at that and you don't really understand what they're saying. And that very good idea actually became a negative for them because people went back with dissonance. It's something that even I try to do with my book. That actually promise what you can deliver. In my book cover, I hope a few of you have read my books. How many of you guys have read my books? Oh, thank you. Good number. Those of you who haven't read my book, shame on you guys. Okay, there are bookshops available all over the city. Go buy it and read it. Okay. So when I was deciding, I'm closely involved in every aspect of my book. When we were working on the cover of my book, most of the ideas that were coming to me was, because it's on Lord Shiva. So let's try and have some graphic designs. Let's try and show Lord Shiva in his mythical form. And I said, no, but that's not what the book is about. The book is about Lord Shiva based on a premise that what if we believe that Lord Shiva was a real historical man? So I was clear. I wanted a real life photograph. I don't want a graphic design. Because I don't want to promise something in the book which the book does not have. Because if I promise that actually it's a traditional mythological tale, most of the people who'd buy such a book would probably feel a sense of dissonance. Right? So promise what is actually there in the product. The second thing is, if you do want to promise something higher, the first step is make sure you get your product up to that level before you start promising it. I can't give you an example from my book on this because I'm a stubborn ass when it comes to my book. I refuse to change my book for any marketing activity. My book for me is sacred. When I write it, it's done. I refuse to change it for anything else. But I'll give you a very good idea that I heard from my wife. She'd heard it at a conference. There is this flower delivering company called Florista. Okay, I don't know how many of you guys have heard of it. It's a very good idea. Essentially, they deliver very hi-fi, flower arrangements. You can actually give them your entire year schedule of whatever birthdays, and they'll have that delivered. It's a very good idea. And they realized that they were actually facing a dissonance problem with their consumers because many of the delivery guys who were delivering those wonderful flower arrangements were dressed shabbily, were smelly, and that was actually destroying the entire, because if you want to deliver something to your wife and you want to make a good impression, and someone who doesn't really, who looks extremely messy lands up at the house and you're not there, she's not going to be too delighted about it. So they actually thought, and it sounds like a pretty minor thing, but that is also a part of the brand experience. It's not just the flower arrangement, it's not just the marketing, it's also the delivery guy. So they actually went through the process of, no, we're going to have standards for hair cutting, personal cleanliness. They actually got them a first class pass so that they can travel cleanly. They actually got their product experience up to what the brand promise was. And I'm sure they will actually succeed. I'm depressed that many of you guys haven't heard of it, but hopefully I'm sure the brand will grow stronger because the product is actually delivering what the brand is, what the brand's promising. The third thing that's a learning for me is actually you shouldn't try and be a fake in the modern world because fakes get caught out. That doesn't mean you have to be a good boy, okay? You can be whoever you are. A perfect example of this is Ryanair, and there are some, I assume, Europeans out here. I don't know how many of them have traveled by Ryanair. If they are CMOs, I assume they don't travel by Ryanair. The Ryanair CEO makes a very proud statement that he's proud of being rude to all his customers. Okay? And that's the entire brand promise, that we deliver absolutely zip except a cheap price. Everything else, you should just be delighted that you get it. Okay? If someone actually gives you a glass of water, be grateful. He actually says this in interviews. Okay? Now, you would actually think, what's wrong with that guy? But Ryanair is one of the most profitable airlines in Europe because consumers know what they're getting when they get into it. And if by happenstance some Ryanair guy happens to be polite to them, they actually get positively surprised. But if the guy is rude, as most Ryanair employees usually are, they don't say, the hell with this, I'm not coming back to this company, because that's not what the brand promise of the company is. They're not trying to be something that they're not. They're genuine, they're telling you, this is all I'm delivering, I'm not delivering anything else. You don't like it, get lost. But there are enough people who are coming for that cheap price. So one of the learnings of the modern age is be genuine, don't try and be a fake. It's one of the things I've tried to do, perhaps inadvertently, with my books as well. I'm an Indian, I speak Indian English. I don't speak English with a British accent. I don't speak British Rajira English. I'm Indian, yeah. What else kind of English will I speak? In the literary world, there's this pressure that no, you have to kind of speak in the British Rajira English. I was very clear, I'm not going to be a fake. I'm going to write in the language that I think in, that I write in. And actually, not being a fake works. Being genuine works in the modern world. There are people who might not like you for who you are. That's okay. But if you try and be a fake, even those who could have liked who you are going to hate you for it. And you can't carry on a fake image for too long in the modern world. Social media catches you out. And the last thing is, in a sense, close to being the point I'm making on being a fake, is that be true to your values. It's actually not just about being good, it's actually in your long-term selfish interest. And for this, I'll give you an example that comes from my book. My book is based on a religious topic. It's based on Lord Shiva. My books had been rejected by every publisher it was sent to in 2009, 2010. I stopped counting after 20 rejections. I was told that the publishing industry is a very fractious industry, that if you put 10 publishers in one room, you get 11 opinions. But on my book, there was complete unanimity. Every publisher hated the book. They said, this book has no hope of selling. So finally, actually, I self-published. And since I self-published, I had to do all the marketing myself. So I went and met various PR agencies. Since I ran the marketing department of my company, fortunately, I at least knew various heads of various PR agencies, and I had meetings with them. And there was this one doyen of the PR industry who met me. I'm not going to take his name. And my wife and I, we went to meet him. So just one second. My wife and I went to meet him, and he told me that, look, what you need for your book, since it's on a religious subject, what you need is some controversy, okay? Because that's what actually sells a book. And that's the reality of India. 95% of the controversies that are created are actually created. They're not genuine controversies of books, of movies, of everything. So of course, my wife and I, we were shocked. We were looking at him, ki kya bol raha hai? I think he misread the reason for our shock, because he told us, no, you don't understand. Controversy khada karne mein itna problem nahi hota hai. You just need some 10 people burning your book. It's all about the angle of the camera. If you have it at a low angle, it seems like a lot of people. So I was obviously, there's no way I was going to do that. Why? Because yes, my book is based on a different interpretation of Lord Shiva, but I'm a genuine devotee of Lord Shiva. I worship him. And my book, and anyone who reads my book, at least I think that will come clear, whether you like it or not, I'm sure at least one thing will come clear, that whoever has written this book is devoted to Lord Shiva. At least that I think is clear in my books. And my books are an act of devotion. I'm not going to go against my values for this to try and sell the book. And yes, the sad truth is controversies do help. Sadly, that does happen. Most books, you create a controversy, there's a sales spike that immediately happens. And you know a book is coming when you know a controversy is created on a particular topic. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And if that means the book won't sell, I don't care. but I'm not going to do something that's against my values. That guy obviously looked at my wife and I like we were, a bunch of idiots who don't understand, how India really works. But actually being true to your values gives you much stronger success going forward. Because if my books picked up, you'll notice that most books which sell on controversies, normally there's just that one controversial sale that happens. Normally, if that author comes back with another book, very rarely. I mean, there are authors, yes, who made a career out of controversy, but very rarely does, and maybe actually controversy is a part of their core value. But very rarely does a controversy generating strategy actually end up working continuously, unless you are the kind of guy who likes poking people. So that's the last thought that I want to leave with you, that you should actually be true to your values. I know it sounds kind of naive and childish, but it actually works in the longer run, in the modern day, when you will get caught out. Social media catches you out. It's not easy being something that you're not. If you're genuinely a guy, if you're Sunny Leone, then, well, you are Sunny Leone. Don't try and be something that you're not. In the age of social media, you cannot be what you're not. That's the point that I want to leave with you. And you need to keep that in mind when you're building a brand. And like I said, promised short speech. Any questions that you guys have? Someone will hopefully take a mic around. And what's your name? Sorry? Misbah. Misbah. Okay. Misbah is the most powerful woman in the world right now, in this room right now. Whoever she gives the mic to can shout out how much ever they want.
Thank you for that inspiring words. My question to you is...
Sorry, could you introduce yourself before?
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Shagun Walia from Reliance Digital.
Hi.
My question to you is, you rightly said that you have to be you while, and you have to build your own brands, that we heard. But my question is, how do you maintain your individuality or your core values in spite your corporate or might your seniors or superiors have different expectations from you? So there are times when you just can't be you. So how do we manage that?
Okay, the first step in being you is knowing who is you. Correct. You have to you have to know who you are. Okay, then that's the only way then you can defend who you are. The second thing that you're talking about, in a way, if I can kind of read between the lines of what you're saying, is what if you're a pragmatic person, correct? And you don't want to be a Shivaji and take on, your bosses for what you believe in, and you want to pragmatically protect your career. But there are two things. There's nothing wrong with being pragmatic. Okay, I myself was a pragmatic guy for most of my career choices. There were things when, I'll come to that in the second point, when I felt strongly about a few things. But, for example, I wrote my first 2 books along with my job. I didn't resign. I don't come from a wealthy family. I can't afford to be irresponsible with my career choices. Like I always joke, I can't tell my kid to starve because daddy is discovering himself. So I made my career choices pragmatically, right? That meant that I had to work extra hard for those, for those 5-6 years when I was managing 2 careers. I also had to make sure that I managed my boss in that time. I knew it would be stupid to try and hide from him that I'm writing a book because he would see it in a bookstore, right? So I actually told him honestly, yeah, I'm writing a book. You tell me what your KRAs are. If I don't deliver, you fire me. But as long as I'm delivering, why should you care about what I'm doing on a Sunday or in my office commute? I also made sure that even when I was leaving my job, I was very pragmatic. I gave my boss a good long 6-month notice period before leaving. I was a member of the senior management committee, so I wasn't just involved in the projects of my area, but in the projects of other departments as well. I made sure I completed all of that before leaving. I found out, I actually kind of helped find my replacement, and then I trained him. So I left only when he took over my job. So my boss, and one can say that like it was stupid because I was leaving for another career in any case. Who cares about it? But I was thinking that what if my next book flops, right? And I wasn't doing all this because I loved my company. I'm being honest. I was doing all this because I want to leave on good relations, because just in case something goes wrong, I need to get back to my job. And I told my boss this honestly when I was leaving, that sir ji kuch gadbad ho gaya, agle kitab mein to main wapas aa jaunga, naukri de do, right? And I left with good relations. He left, he threw a farewell party for me. He gave me a lovely, massive idol of Lord Shiva as a farewell gift. And I call it being pragmatic. There's nothing wrong with being pragmatic. You have to decide what's important for you. However, there were times when I had to stand up for something. There was a time when I was stuck in a job where my boss was doing something unethical, right, with some billings. I knew that. Now, I'm not as brave as Shivaji was, so I wasn't going to go and fight him and say, no, put this. I'm telling you honestly how I was, okay? Because I'm not going to put my career at risk. God knows what he would do to me. What I told him was, you're not going to do this in my department. You want to do it in someone else's department, go ahead and do what you want, okay? Don't do it in my department. Did I take a risk at that time? Yes. Why did I do it? Because no, I didn't want anything happening in my department, okay? But that was the level to which my pragmatism would push me. Okay, now it's up to you where you draw the lines. I'm not saying anything is right or wrong. Today, I would have probably, if I'm the kind of character I am today, I would have probably reacted differently at that point of time. I would have probably taken it even more strongly. Okay, but this is what I did at that point of time. I can give you another example. There was a marketing campaign which I was very committed to, and my boss wasn't. He didn't think it was a good campaign. If I look back right now, I think I was very aggressive and very stupid. But my boss was the kind of guy who listened to stuff. So I actually told him, boss, you can't spell marketing. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead with this campaign, whether you like it or not. If it doesn't work, you fire me. Okay. Thankfully for me, that campaign actually worked. But if I look back right now, maybe I would have handled that a little differently. But the choice is yours. What is the what are the limits that you want to push to? Who are you as a person? And then you be true to who you are. You have to be sure who you are first before you start managing your environment. Someone back there.
Yeah, this is Deepak Sethi from Solutions QED.
Hi, sir.
Amish, thank you for a very, very authentic presentation.
Thank you.
We connected with you. I'm sure a lot of us connected with you. My comment and question to you is regarding the use of the term in the modern world. So I totally endorse your principles. I think they're very, very eternal. I'm not seeing as to what is it in the modern world which makes them any more relevant. They were relevant, 20 years ago, they were relevant a century ago, and they're relevant today also. So I'm not actually seeing the relevance of the word modern world, and it's there in the title, and you also mentioned about it on a couple of times. If you could comment on that. Thank you.
Okay, good question, philosophical question. I think in every age, we end up thinking that we are special in some way. And that's not something that's specific only of this age. It's true across various points of time in history. What is the reality? The reality is there's certainly things that one can learn from the ancients. And that's part of actually what drives me. I believe there is a lot of wisdom in our ancients. And I'm not just talking about the ancients of India, the ancients of across the world. The ancients of Greece, the ancients of Egypt, of China, of Southeast Asia, the ancients of Mesopotamia. There's a lot that we can learn from them on how to lead our lives today. And that's essentially what philosophy is. Philosophy, sadly, has been reduced to a subject in the humanities stream in college these days, where people who are so dumb that they can't get into, let alone science or engineering, but they can't even get into English literature or history, they study philosophy because you have to graduate in something. That's not the way it was in the ancient times. Philosophy was the first subject that you studied because philosophy is the art of living your life. And what's the point of living your life if you don't know how to live your life? There are a lot of things that we can learn from the ancients, but there are many ways in which each age is unique in its own way. There are things that we are faced with right now, which maybe people in the ancients did not face. How you live your life, if you can somehow be true to yourself, and still have a perspective of the wisdom of the ages, then you can actually lead a successful life. That's the way I see it. I don't know if I managed to answer your question.
Any further questions, ladies and gentlemen?
You done? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, let's have a warm round of applause one more time for Mr. Tripathi. And sir, I'm going to request you to please stay back on stage and please invite Mr. Deepak Lamba one more time to please present a token of gratitude to Mr. Amish Tripathi.